More medications, less health. Something's broken. Traditional medicine manages symptoms, but true healing addresses root cause. I'm Josh Rimini, pharmacist turned healer. At Beyond the Pills, we merge ancient wisdom with modern-day science to inspire you through stories of transformation, practical trainings, and holistic healing. Join me and other practitioners as we guide you towards vibrant health, body, mind, and spirit, and move beyond symptom management into true healing. Hello. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Beyond the Pills. I'm Josh Rimini, pharmacist turned healer. And today we have a special guest, Oliver James Jenkin. Oliver offers a safe space to gently reignite your lust for life, even when it feels out of reach. His approach isn't about fixing. It's about helping you reconnect with the strength, creativity, and love already within. Through simple, calming guidance, Oliver helps you discover the skills to find peace in the midst of chaos, to hold yourself with the same compassion you offer others, and to imagine a life where you feel safe, inspired, and free to create. No matter how heavy life has been, Oliver believes healing is possible. We have a lot in common here. One step, one breath, one smile at a time. Welcome to the show, Oliver James.
Thank you very much for having me, Josh. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, we instantly connected when we talked a couple weeks ago, and I'm really excited to have you on because I think what you do in your story is so relevant to the present day, right? Like just hearing your hearing your bio, like amidst the chaos and finding peace, and a lot of people are just struggling right now. So let's just dive in. Let's get into it. Tell people a little bit about who you are and what's been going on.
Yeah, sure. So, I live quite a busy lifestyle. I have a lot of creative strings to my bow. I live with my beautiful wife, Rebecca, and our 6 gorgeous children. Some of them are homeschooled, some of them aren't. So you can imagine that takes on a whole plethora of activities, commitments, timestamps within our week. And then obviously we run our business together as well. So we run an in-person practice here in Devon in the UK. I obviously do stuff underneath my own brand and own name online mainly. And we also do sound healing events up and down the southwest of England. So it's not uncommon for us to find our own selves in amidst that chaos. And I think my path has been all about finding a place for myself and my expression and the difference that I want to make in the world in a really authentic way. So I guess the journey really started. I went to university when I was 19 to study anthropology, always had a very strong inclination to explore just the general question of what is it to be human? What is it to be alive? What is awareness? All these sorts of things, all these sorts of questions I'm still interested in now and very much guide people through, but maybe in a very different vocabulary. So I think like many of the people I work with, you find a culturally available avenue for your naturally driven expression. Mine would have been, I guess, through academia. I looked very different to how I look now. I was really overweight at that time, particularly unhealthy. Moved to London, did maybe a term of university and just realized that really wasn't for me. Now, that kind of came about through an intuitive feeling, but also exploring different things, different mechanisms about how world architecture really works, whether it be big pharma in the instance of how that is orientated, or the banking system or the political system. And I guess it left me in quite a disempowered place by confusion, really, trying to find my place in the world by analyzing what was wrong and out of balance in the world. And I think very much that reflected how I felt about myself at the time as well. Then one night after I'd moved back and I was just working a job in a restaurant, which was great for me because it was a sort of standard day, rinse and repeat. I could go swimming in the sea, I could work out, and I was kind of building my robustness up again. I let go of a lot of my addictions at that time. I also became far more interested in natural medicine and what I was eating. And one night I was just slipping off to sleep and breathing quite rhythmically. And then all of a sudden, just this most amazing experience and sense of expansiveness in my body. I woke up the next morning realizing that must be what people say meditation must be. And that sort of began a journey of sending the pendulum back the other way, really, to discovering techniques and different modalities in which I could feel more self empowered, and through that journey, slowly becoming, I guess, more influential and impactful within my local environment. And of course, my relationships. There's been all sorts of bereavements, separations, trials, and tribulations in that period from my life. But really, the constant has been this sense of returning to self, and also really kind of finding how do I communicate what's going on in here to other people, and how do I connect with others to enrich my experience. I think that something I was always really aware of is that spirituality, science, all of these different niche disciplines can become quite nihilistic the more self driven they become. And I think the fruit of any philosophy, any practice, is how easy and how adaptable is it to be able to share with the community of the people around you, which is so integral to how I live my life, and obviously how me and my wife try to run our home too. Because if there's any sort of litmus test for if something's worth its salt, it's your own children. They will completely tear apart anything that you think about yourself or the world. And I really embrace that process too. I think that I've always approached these things with a real heavy dose of skepticism. And that's something that I really try to imbue and champion in those I work with one-on-one, and even through my content too, that your reality is very much to be understood through your senses, that your senses are a gift that can complement the logical parts of you, especially when it comes to health and especially spirituality too.
Yeah. I love to connect the dots when we have guests on the show here. I always see them as like the common threads, right? The things that we're doing, like the path to wholeness, finding myself, looking inward, you know, asking those deeper questions. It's kind of like got you in that space of like fulfillment and moving that forward. Cause like this summer was really a big step in my evolution, because that was like I named it like the the journey to self, like going across into Peru and doing the things I needed to do to get myself like in this, from within to without, not the without, like not the outside to the in. And I love how your journey has brought you to this place of realization where where you like, where we all sort of like we start to fit into what we're here to do, and what we're here to put an impact on the world rather than just have a job. And I love how you say the simplicity of it, right? The simplicity of these things that we do is we learn these modalities, but you are compelled not to just learn them for yourself. Like there's this is part of who you are and what you do for others now, and exploring consciousness and getting people to, you know, love who they are inside, and having this space of like helping them through that process in their lives, coaching and life coaching, and moving people through meditation. I heard sound healing. I want to dive into these things because um and because this show's all about ancient wisdom meets modern science, right? We know that people in the ancients have found and meditation and all of these concepts for years and years, and we're catching up now where the science is irrefutable. I call it the West world brain, but our intellect has
Yes.
really gotten to the place of, this isn't just like what our Western world would say, like this isn't just woo anymore. Like this is the science of it. There's neuroscience to this. There's there's trauma healing that can happen when we adopt these practices. So tell us a little bit, like this journey that you've gone through and then starting to develop, let's call it your skill set now, is like, you're working with sound healing now. Like you said, you're coaching people one on one, you have an online presence, you have an in-person presence, and you're like me. Um, your life is pretty busy. You got 6 children. That's like a basketball team plus a reserve, right? That's a lot. And then you work with your wife, like hand in hand, not just like family and relationships, but with your work. And that's can be very challenging. So,
It certainly is challenging, and I think sometimes I have to pinch myself, as I think we all do, to sort of, on one hand, remind ourselves of the blessings that we have in the architecture of our life, and also employ a healthy dose of self-compassion when you kind of browbeat yourself or you feel you're not doing as good as you can, because there is definitely a load there that has to come into consideration with how I manage my own self and being, as an individual, but very much as a man in modern day culture, within a relationship, as a father, as a business owner, all these different things. I think the very thing that I use, teach, and have always been curious about is this undeniable sense of self from which we can draw power. So, for example, if you say to yourself simply in your head, hippopotamus, there's two parts there, right? There's the part that says hippopotamus, and there's the part that hears you saying hippopotamus. And this interplay between who is who and how through different practices we can take deeper and deeper and deeper dives into the part of us that listens has been something which has served me time and time and time again. And I think as my practice has evolved, as my sphere of responsibility has evolved as well, if I were to approach it in a very logical and linear way, there would be no way that I could organize all of the parts, all of the mechanics. So I've had to almost tap out and surrender at certain points to the idea of myself. And it's very fractally evolving in that sense, because you're constantly getting to grow. The thing that I was always drawn to science for when I was younger, that sort of Jules Verne, late 18th century, early 19th century ethic of science was all about discovery and curiosity, understanding and surrendering that there's always going to be known unknowns and unknown unknowns about yourself. So this is why practices of meditation have always served me very well, and why I see them serve my clients so well is because you're getting back in touch with this kind of wanderlust fueled part of your being that really embraces the unknown, the growing edge, and the curiosity, instead of kind of being afraid of it or compressed by that element of your nature. If I thought about all the different and coordinates of my life, and if I'm open to help and guidance and reminders, I wouldn't get much done, and I wouldn't have much creative fun. That's definitely the thing that I've learned the most over the years.
yeah, I love that. It's funny how these conversations have synchronicities in life and stuff, because like I'm in a big transition in my professional and personal career. Like we're really moving into these depths of going all in on wellness and functional health, and moving the needle. And there's a lot of unknown, and I love embracing the unknown. I've learned this process through my own meditation practice and learning and teachings from, you talked about surrender and embracing these unknowns. And I loved how you said, like, there's some known unknowns and then there's some unknown unknowns, and that's beautiful because, yeah,
Those are the spiky ones.
yeah. And we aren't in this linear world anymore. People know this, right? We are in this space of embracing, like, what instead of change, it's evolution, it's expansion, right? We're expanding, ever expanding, just like our universe and our consciousness is. but our world, like our like world that we're living in our present moment, our world. And I love you touched a little bit on who's in there, right? Am I the observer or, the subject or the object? And Michael Singer talks a lot about that in his book, The Surrender Experiment. And that was one thing I did this summer was, you know, completely surrendering to the resonance of what I felt was in alignment with me. And I just kept saying yes to those and saying no to the things that weren't. And as I do that, I always see these breadcrumbs and synchronicities just start dropping. Like, hey, you're on the right path. You're on the right path. You're on the right path. And I think I want you to talk a little bit about, you know, that the that component of like surrendering to the moment, surrendering to these things. Cause I think people think almost sometimes that word surrender, if you said that to a veteran, they're going to be like, heck no, we are never going to surrender, right? They have to like think about it in a different way. But, let's talk a little bit about exploring this inner world and moving in the moment, because I think what's we're all understanding that this world is changing very rapidly. We've got AI, we've got consciousness, we've got quantum. Uh, physics and quantum health and things are moving in a very expansive way. And I think it can be a little bit daunting at times. And I think when you teach the people that you're teaching and coaching, you're really helping them, you know, when we call it surrender, is like we're opening and unfolding into the moment that is and talking to them about, I love where you say like you help them find peace in the midst of the chaos, right? That's what I think we're really helping people with in this space of mental awareness and mental health and challenges. And I want to talk to people a little bit about some of your methods and what you're doing to help them through their process.
Yeah, sure. I think it's the marriage of that quantum awareness with somatic experience. So there's all sorts of different you can trigger that. And in fact, that's primarily what me and my wife work with, and in different ways, but it's the same understanding and modality. This modality that we kind of developed called quantum somatic healing, where somebody is getting a felt sense of their non-linear awareness. And I suppose also really better put their non-linear influence. So surrender is kind of misinterpreted sometimes as a passive process. It's actually a very active process. You gave the example of a veteran. Now there's all sorts of examples within combat and martial arts and military life of being in active flow states. So one of the things that I do with people is to help them, because quite often people coming from that West world brain where you're talking, they have to make an enemy of what they've been and differentiate to become something else. Now, I'm not criticizing that. You see that process, say, through addiction recovery, where somebody says, I was an addict and now I don't want to be. They have to create that contrast to make that bridge. But much like addiction recovery, we want to also encompass all of your being, all of your experience. So quite often people will come with a spiritual inclination or spiritual ambitions to have a more peaceful life or a more connected awareness. They've had little Easter eggs, cookie crumbs, like you mentioned, throughout their life. And they think they kind of have to completely reinvent the wheel. But I don't think that you do. I think it's about really cross-pollinating the skill set that you've built up through your life. Invariably, we all look back at different points of our life and think, oh, I was off path there. We get a little bit older and we realize, no, even when things were terrible, I was on path. And I'll give you an example, which has struck me by surprise. I remember being 13 in school with a book of short stories by Roald Dahl. And I was reading completely the wrong story that we were supposed to be reading. The story that I was reading was about this character called Henry Sugar, who was in this story a gambler, horrible man. He falls into this library at this country home. He finds this small pamphlet, which is all about an Indian doctor's account of a man who could see without using his eyes. He reads this book gets all of the information, all of the practice and the meditation. His goal and his ambition is to learn to be able to do this trick and obviously read cards, make loads of money. He spends, I think, 4 or 5 years doing this technique. And I remember plain as day, being 13 years old, reading this line, that he realized after his first win that the process of meditation that he'd gone through had completely changed his value set. And in the story, he then goes on to use this technique to set up a trust for orphanages and hospitals for children. I recently saw a film that was made of this story. And I remember clear as day, being 13 years old, reading that book, feeling my whole body expand as I was soaking in this story, looking around my classroom and thinking, this is what I want to learn about. When I was watching the film, only last week this was, I could feel my whole body expand into that awareness. And it's like creating a quantum thread with that moment. I haven't grown through time. I am growing in time. And the way that I teach meditation, and especially, I think there's a bit of a, in all the Abrahamic religions, there's a bit of a hangover in all of our collective unconsciousness about making feeling and desire sinful. Now, biologically, that doesn't work because these sort of reconnections through this quantum expansion actually enrich your immune system. They enrich your protein profile. They restore you hormonally. And it's all about not making war with yourself. You can imagine somebody who's not at war with their own feeling, not at war with their own desire, is a lot less likely to be at war with somebody else. So in terms of all of that being a personal process, great. I work one-on-one with people all day long. My content, my hope and my aim, and also my desire for myself, is that a lot of these processes that I see in myself, that I see in others, we're all fumbling in the dark a bit because there isn't a culture that we've been brought up in to hold us, where we get to complement each other's psychology, each other's skill set in a way that builds a foundation that these beliefs, these understandings, these knowings about the world become, they just become unmovable because they're cultural, they're habitual. So I do feel, for as lovely as everything I just said, and it's almost a very special time because change is so massive on the meta that it really requires us in our own micro universes to really be that change. That's the only way that it's going to work. If we want this culture, like you're doing with your work Beyond the Pills, we do actually have to create it. And also with coming full circle back to surrender, not being a passive process, but actually being an active one, where you're listening, basically, you're listening and you're responding, and you're really freeing up. I hate to sort of use the phrase clearing trauma because that's not how I quite look at it, I suppose. But in experiencing and re-experiencing places in your body and your emotions and your energy field that are kind of on lock because then maybe there wasn't the safety, maybe it wasn't the right time, by reconnecting yourself to your own power source, you get to be able to have a system of physiology that is sensitive to the level of input that is going on. It's quite common for somebody to go for a massage, no shoulder pain, come out of the massage with shoulder pain. And they're like, oh, that didn't help. And it's like, well, you were probably mitigating, your nervous system was mitigating that pain for that long that you've actually just come in and cleared certain pathways for you to feel it and be aware of it. And it's very much the same with some of the work that I do. It is non-linear. All of a sudden people see, very much quantum leaps in their health. The things that I've had people, one woman hadn't been for a wee, like to pass water, to urinate for 20 years. And after a session, she was just able to urinate. And it's because it's not actually that miraculous. It's a bit like life. Like life is really common when you look out of your window. Doesn't make it any less special. And it's exactly the same when it comes to your body's capacity to heal, because it's always like mycelium. It's always trying to hyphenate. It's always trying to connect up the dots. And this is the same process as you see on a sort of neurological level as we also experience through time. So me kind of catching back up with my 13-year-old self, the level of curiosity, the level of expansion, the level of knowing, oh my God, this is some sort of fire within inside me. This is how I work with people. Say, for example, somebody comes from a corporate scenario, then they want to do their own creative passion project or become self-employed. They often think that they have to sort of shelve all of the skill set that they've learned. And I'm like, whoa, whoa,
Right.
whoa. You're able to meet deadlines. You're able to communicate with people in terms of different teams. You're able to talk to people from all different backgrounds and lifestyles. Let's take all of that good stuff with us. So it's all good. It's all very, very good stuff. The same with people who've been in abusive relationships or even some of the most traumatic experience that you could possibly imagine. I am consistently blown away. One of my sort of specialities, not by direct intention, but being guided there, is working with people who have experienced like quite severe levels of sexual abuse of all different types. To see people who've gone through those experiences love, even have the audacity and the bravery to love, and then go on to find healthy and successful relationships. It's just really testament to just how your body is always looking to orientate with the now, with the present moment. And I think by closing your eyes, going into yourself, meditation, heart brain coherence, all these different things, they're all fantastic. But I think the most powerful element is the sort of meta identity that starts to build as you incrementally show up for yourself and identify with that observer, with that part that hears. Because if someone busts in the room now and shouts at me, I'm not going to be as afraid of that if I just thought I was my bones and flesh. It does have like a very profound impact on the way that we seek opportunity and manage risk within our daily lives. And I think that's an important part that's often forgotten when we approach spirituality and energetic health from a very kind of, oh, it's just a woo-woo kind of thing. Because something that really brought me into this world, just like reading that as a 13-year-old kid, is all of the anomalous stuff you hear. Like I remember when I was even younger watching a program on some late night documentary about remote viewing. And I was like, well, the police are using remote viewers, so it obviously works. Or in agriculture here, I don't know if it's the same in the US, there's a tradition of dowsing where somebody holds two metal rods, a bit like coat hangers, and they walk to see where to find water. Every farmer
Yeah.
here in the UK still employ a local dowser to find the water because it's the easiest way, right? Before radar or all these different things. So I love anomalies. I absolutely love anomalies because they point to hidden places where your own perceptual field is bias, right? And I think it's great to have your biases challenged on a daily basis.
Yeah, and there's so much in there. And
I love to. So sorry about.
no, it's good. It's good because I've like there's so much to like I don't want to call it unpack, but like there's I love that you said the story. First of all, the story about like remembering the story you read as a child at 13 and going and having that moment, like that intertwined moment where you're like, I think it was like that. Just it was a whiff then, right? It was like I think this was something I want to do. And then what I call full circle, right? You've gone all the way through your life. You've developed this whole process. It actually happened. And then you happenstance, let's call it that. But like it was divine intervention in this movie just totally came into your awareness now. And then it brings me to the point of divine timing versus what we perceive as timing, right? You talked about the quantum intertwining of that moment versus this and how we're living in time, past, present, and future, right? We're understanding this more from a scientific level now. But like you said, even with the farmers, like there's just some things that have been sort of I call it ancient wisdom where we didn't need all the science to make sense of it. It just is. And this beauty of like the timing of where we think like something is supposed to be the way it's supposed to be. But then if we allow, because one of my mantras is from one of my spiritual friends and mentors is like push less, allow more.
Yeah.
And when we allow, it's like, and then I get these periods of awe, right? This awe that like, holy moly, that just happened. And it, for me, it doesn't, the surprise doesn't come anymore because I'm so connected to knowing that there's this divine greater good that if we trust and allow, it does start to appear, but it will always come in a way that we least expect it, which is why I know it works. And you have this beautiful moment with yourself that says like it's a full circle from age 13 and you're just like this, it's like that validation came. I'll give you a couple examples just in recent times, like where I went on my sabbatical and I dropped everything and I moved to Asheville and I was doing some things to prepare myself for Peru and my journey. And things that I had accumulated that didn't really have like a true sense or meaning or feel like automatically just came into play. It was just like, oh, even the little things like that chair or that table just happened to fit perfectly where I was there. But it had been something that I had and hadn't really used for like years. And it just started falling into this beautiful, I would call it like this 5D puzzle, right? It's like, oh, that one worked. And all of a sudden it's just like you I think when you start to become aware and you're starting to be that observer, like you said, it starts popping up so much more frequently because you're so much more receptive to it too, you know? That's how I feel. Like I feel like it's not like it's happening more to me. It's there's a there's a connection now that I have with the world that maybe I hadn't had before because maybe I'm more open to it, right? I'm moving in that direction of being open to that, fractal, this new environment that's coming. And I just love how the synchronicities start to happen in those ways when people are aligned, when they're aligned with their inner self. And so talk to people a little bit about, how people you said you work with people online and you work with people in person and you have some content. Um, I've done a couple of your meditations online. I think they're awesome because you gift that. It's you go right onto your website and you can click and hit. You can listen to these beautiful meditations to reset and to move forward. So I was really appreciative of that because a lot of the times people don't know how to get started or what to do here. Because there's a lot of people that are struggling right now, and I don't think we need to just sit in the chaos and struggle. I think a lot of people, just in general, it's not bad or good, it's human nature, is we try to like repel from the things we don't feel are good, and we try to like cling to the things that we feel good with. And sometimes we're like, oh, it's so chaotic and the world stinks and everything's wrong. And it's like, we can embrace that, not because it's good or bad, but because it is, like you said, in the present moment. And so I still want people to get some things that they can do to not adapt or be resilient to, but just like you said, is find peace in the chaos.
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing that's really helped me, professionally, the reason why I've been doing this like nearly for a decade, is because of being able to offer free content. So, obviously I do that through my website. There's also another great app that I'd like to point people towards called Insight Timer. So I have a profile on there. I think there's something like, I think there's something like 3 or 4 million listens to my meditations, which just lights me up on that app because it means that so many people had an experience of themselves. The reason why the free content has been so great for me personally is that it gives me a barometer of the effect and the influence that my work has had. I obviously work for people. So how I work usually online or in person is a one-off session, because that is maybe what a person needs at that time, or maybe it's all they can afford of my time. And I respect to be able to offer that opportunity, because with that comes a 90-minute session, my full attention, a complete onboarding process, and then a sort of curated prescription of it could be meditations of mine, different documentaries that spring to my list and bank of resources is just hours and hours and hours long, because I really like this world, what music they like. They might have danced when they were younger, or they might have done model making, and it's all about pointing them to these things to sort of bring that quantum connection they feel in the session and the guided meditations and energy healing aspect into their real world practice. And then other people, they work with me for 12 sessions and they sort of space that as they wish. I have people who've worked with me for years, and I've taken them through all sorts of transitions in their life, their career. It is really quite amazing. But the free content, when I get a message from somebody who says, hey, I've been doing your free meditation series for, 3 months and it's completely changed my life. I've changed my job. I just want to say thank you. I am like blown away, because the way that I record my content, just to give people an insight, which I've come to learn is very uncommon and unique, is that I just sit down. And I do it ad hoc. There's no script. I just empty myself out completely. And I guess you could say I'm almost quantumly connecting with the desire of people who want a track from me, but also finding the sort of 5D puzzle. I love that phrase, because that's how I view it too, where I just get to experience by proxy some amalgamation of that transformation that's going to come for people from that meditation. So making a meditation that then goes on to impact hundreds of thousands of people is just, it blows my head. If you told that to that 13-year-old kid reading that story, I would have been completely blown away. But what I love about it is that there's people in C-suite positions, CEOs, marketing directors. There's housewives in the back end of Alabama who've never really had any experience of meditation whatsoever, and they find the strength to leave their abusive partner and take their family to another state. There's young kids who maybe don't have that support or that application at home, and then they go off and finish that application to our college. Or maybe it's just a stopgap for somebody on their lunch break. And maybe that meditation, this is the way that I like to think about it, puts them in a good mood, puts them in a good way, and they meet that person. They might not ever make that connection. But for as emotionally connected and quantumly involved my work is in that sense, there is also this mechanical aspect, like an architect, that I'm bringing to it too, where I'm seeing these pings and these resonances and these ripples creating, almost like in the back end code of people's psychology and reality, a positive force. The most important thing to me about anybody that works with me or anybody who meets me, if they have some sort of experience of themselves, is that they go and they say to themselves and are able to say, I did that they did that for themselves. Not that I did it, not that the meditation did it, not that the breath work or the technique, but they did it. Because as soon as they can self-identify with that, we're crumbling all sorts of mental matrices about putting things on pedestals. Bringing it back to ancient wisdom, like you said, I think there's a quantum leap in somebody's life when they really start to recognize they're more than just their physical form. And then there's another, which is really reflected in ancient traditions, where they start to become visible in that way of being, visible in that lifestyle, visible in that view of themselves. And then they start to celebrate it. They start to talk about it. Doesn't necessarily have to be in a scientific or a spiritual vocabulary. I see older people going into the community gardens here in the UK, coming out with their squashes and their courgettes, or late of an evening in the summer sunshine. I look at their faces and I'm like, yeah, you know it. You're like living and breathing it. So for me, I just love the mixture of people, diverse backgrounds, diverse cultures that are just attracted to my work. It's just such a blessing.
Yeah, and I think that's the universality of it. I think sometimes we get into these like, who's your ideal client and like these
Yeah.
specifics behind it. And it's like wholeness, like being connected to something greater than you and being in this purpose driven life, like and experiencing life in these senses and being these divine beings in a human existence is free and available to every single human on the planet. That's what we get to do. And I love that you're acting as this guide, you know, eh, um, I don't like the word coach anymore because it kind of puts a different hierarchy into it. It's like, we're here to serve. Like this is why you have this beautiful free, you know, it's right on your website. What's your website, by the way, just so people know?
It's just simply oliverjamesjenkin.com.
Perfect. So oliverjamesjenkin.com. I went on it earlier. Um, did his meditations. Like you said, Insight Timer, lots of people know what that is. So now they can see you and follow you in there. And you and I both agree, like we're here to offer. And if they want more, they can come reach out to you. You can do a session, you can do a group, like a package. You've got people that you've helped for years. Like I have people that I have helped for years because it's in resonance and I always think it's the value exchange, right? It's an energy exchange. And so when we're able to deliver more energetic value to people than the energy in the form of currency or the form of time or the form, like there's different types of energies exchanged, but when we can contribute and be a giver, then the abundance comes in return. And I feel like when people are serving, that's the best way I feel. Like I don't ever like to sell anything. It's like I'm offering. And if it matches with us, let's work together, right? And so I think you're doing awesome stuff because, you know, hundreds of, like, for me, and it's the same thing. It's like this podcast is like my way of helping people open their eyes, get a veil open a door that they didn't understand that they might be, because they might be stuck. And the medical system is just failing them, and they're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, and they might just grab an episode and it's like, oh, I'm going to explore this meditation or this sound healing or this type of thing. And for whatever reason, I've had, close to a couple 100,000 downloads. And that's because it's just, I'm so happy for that. Not because I want followers or like it's going to make me like, no, it's like, oh, I'm doing such good work because anybody can get this and get value and benefit to improving their life. That's what I think why it's such a match between, the guests that come on this show is really in that alignment. You're here to serve. You're here to do well in the world. I always say I just want to put a dent in the universe, like just a little dent. Like if I can do that and like in a good way, we're really doing well for not only humanity, but we're serving our own self by helping others. And so I'm own zone like zones of genius to help people in the way that you do and how you do it, because it's actually not that difficult when you start working with somebody or they start to understand that these things are all innate inside of them. It's like I don't do anything. It's like they're doing the work, right? This is where I think people um have that misconception, especially in this West world brain of ours. It's like that person's gonna fix me, or that drug
Yeah.
or that thing is gonna fix me. And what I love working with people in transformation and healing is showing them it's all in there, it's all within them. And I think you really do well with starting and ending with that with people, because I think it's so empowering when you sit there and you like, I did that, right? It's not like something happened that on the outside world. It's like we're all available to do this within ourselves. So amazing. Thank you so much for all that stuff. All you're doing. Go visit his website. Go learn more. you can get on, are you on Instagrams and stuff like that? Or is it really just your website?
I know Instagram and stuff as well. And I'd say that a great read on my website is the section where it just explains about my story, where I kind of break it down into different stages of my life. So I think that one of the things that people will always find quite interesting about me is how I can have different elements of my life all going at the same time. Especially, I think there's a lot of lonely people out there. So my family life and my connection with my wife really speaks to people's aspirations for that level of support and connection and realism and impact in their everyday life.
And that's beautiful because that's why we're also on this planet, is to have these connections, right? These
For
connections are
sure.
not, and then so that's using these as pillars for health and healing is really what the essence of where I feel the golden age of where we're going in healthcare and humanity and our consciousness is really, embracing these ideas so we can actually move ourselves. And by moving ourselves, we can move the collective. We can move humanity through with our own change and how we show up in the world. So we could
Yes,
probably go on for like another 2 hours. We'll maybe go on another show. Like, this is just the beginning. I love these chats. This is amazing. If you had to give people one thing out of this conversation today, what would it be?
that your senses are not something to be afraid of. That the richness that is there in your feeling really is worth unlocking, whether that's a little bit of fear or a whole heap of fear. It really, that is the one thing that I'd like to translate to everybody. The more connected you are to your senses, the more real the world becomes, and the more real you are to the world too.
That's beautiful. And so true. So thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate your time and energy and what you're doing in the world. I appreciate you.
Likewise, thank you.
All right, everybody. That's a wrap. Go see him on his website. Go grab a meditation. This was awesome. Until next time, stay well. Thanks for joining me today on Beyond the Pills. If our mission to deprescribe 10 million unnecessary medications resonates with you, share this episode, subscribe, and leave a review. Whether you're a practitioner or someone ready to reclaim your health, visit rx2wellness.com for free resources to begin your journey. Together, let's go beyond the pills and co-create a world of vibrant health and true healing. Until next time, live better and stay well.